Have you ever looked at the world and thought, why can't people just treat each other better? That quiet moment at the grocery store when someone cuts in line and pretends not to notice. Or the evening news that leaves your heart a little heavier. Talks of war, sanctions, trade disputes, and leaders pointing fingers instead of shaking hands. At our age, it's easy to ask, where did the world go wrong? But maybe the better question is, what am I doing right in the small corner I can still touch? You see, there's a reason Confucius's words still echo across centuries. What you do not want done to yourself, do not do to others. It sounds simple, almost too simple. But let me tell you, this idea is like a river. It looks calm on the surface, but it runs deep beneath, especially in today's world where misunderstanding and mistrust seem to be more contagious than any virus. Let me share a quick story. A friend of mine, let's call her Linda, lives alone in a small town not far from here. She's 67, still active, still sharp, still caring. Every week, she bakes a small tray of banana bread and takes it to her neighbor's porch. Not because they're best friends, not because the neighbor asks, but because she knows what it feels like to be forgotten. She once told me, I just try to do what I wish someone would do for me. That's all. That's all. But it isn't small. And in a world where people are busy shouting over each other, where even countries are locking horns in trade wars, economic chess matches, and blame games, we forget this: we are all just people trying to matter. From Washington to Beijing, Moscow to Brussels, every political dispute has a heartbeat behind it. Every tariff has a farmer on the edge of losing his land. Every sanction has a grandmother wondering if her medicine will arrive in time. We're told these battles are necessary. Maybe sometimes they are. But if you wouldn't want it done to your family, to your health, to your livelihood, should it be done at all? Now, I know we may not run nations. We may not draft policy or shake hands at world summits. But we do something just as powerful. We influence the world we walk through. How we speak to the waitress. How we listen to the neighbor who repeats the same story 3 times. How we choose to be generous in moments when it's easier to be silent. Let me ask you something. When was the last time someone truly saw you? Not just as a senior citizen or a retiree, but as a human being with value, with depth, with a story worth hearing. Now flip it. When was the last time you did that for someone else? Sometimes the golden rule is not about grand gestures. It's in the little, invisible choices we make. Holding the elevator, returning the grocery cart, choosing not to argue with someone just to win. And yes, even choosing not to spread anger just because we're hurt by the world's chaos. Because at this stage in life, you start to realize something powerful. Your influence doesn't shrink with age, it sharpens. People see you differently. They expect calm, they expect wisdom. And you know what? That's not a burden, it's a gift. You become the quiet teacher in the room. The one who's seen decades pass and still believes kindness is worth the effort. Now, I get it. Not everyone will return the favor. Not everyone will treat you how you treat them. But that's the real test, isn't it? To live by your values not because others deserve it, but because you do. One time, I saw a man in his 70s patiently helping a young boy tie his shoelaces in the park. The boy wasn't even his grandson, just a stranger who looked lost. The man looked up and said, I don't want to live in a world where people stop helping just because they're strangers. Neither do I, and I bet neither do you. So as we sit and watch the news, stories of countries refusing to speak, businesses pulling out of deals, entire populations suffering over political pride, remember this: global peace starts with personal choices. You don't fix the world by shouting louder. You change it by modeling what it should look like. You wouldn't want to be ignored, so don't ignore others. You wouldn't want to be judged harshly, so extend grace. You wouldn't want to be left out, shut down, shouted at, so choose empathy even when it's hard. Because what you model, especially at this age, ripples outward. You teach not with lectures, but with example. And in doing so, you show the younger generation something they've almost forgotten in this age of division. That dignity isn't loud. Respect isn't dramatic. And doing the right thing still matters quietly, powerfully, without a spotlight. Let's keep going. Have you noticed how quickly people react these days? Someone disagrees with you online, and suddenly they're your enemy. A news anchor says something off script, and the comment section becomes a battlefield. Even in families, a small misunderstanding turns into silence that lasts for years. It didn't used to be this way, did it? We used to pause. We used to ask questions before we formed conclusions. But somewhere along the way, the world started rushing. Faster opinions, faster judgments, faster anger. And in all that noise, the golden rule got quieter. But here's the thing. That rule never stopped being true. What you do not want done to yourself, do not do to others. That rule still works. It still heals. And maybe right now, it's what we need more than ever. Because even though the world has gotten louder, you've lived long enough to know the loudest voice isn't always the wisest. The first reaction isn't always the right one. And in most cases, the people who shout the most are usually the ones who feel the most afraid. So what if we didn't mirror that? What if we chose differently, intentionally? You've got the years, the life lessons, the wisdom tucked into your quiet mornings and late night reflections. Use them. When the neighbor says something you disagree with, pause. Would you want to be dismissed, or do you want to be understood? When a younger family member challenges your view, don't shut the door. You wouldn't want someone shutting the door on you, and this extends far beyond personal interactions. Right now, you see entire nations doing to each other what they'd never accept for themselves. Economic sanctions meant to punish, but that end up hurting regular families. Trade wars that are supposed to be about national pride, but often just raise grocery bills for seniors trying to stretch a fixed income. You see leaders drawing hard lines in the sand, refusing to bend because compromise is mistaken for weakness. But you know better, because you've lived through times when a handshake meant more than a headline. You remember when neighbors could vote differently, but still share coffee on the porch. And you've seen what happens when ego replaces empathy, when nations and people alike stop asking, "How would I feel if that were done to me?" That's the power of this simple principle. It's not just about manners. It's about moral imagination. The ability to place yourself in another person's shoes, even when you disagree, even when it's hard, even when you think you're right. You know how many problems in life would simply disappear if both sides paused long enough to think. Would I want to be treated this way? That thought alone could cool tempers, slow wars, and soften hearts hardened by years of pride. It might not change the headlines overnight, but it will change the way we live. And at this age, maybe that's the bigger victory. We're not here to win every argument. We're here to leave a legacy of peace, a legacy of kindness, of showing the younger generation that maturity isn't about being louder or tougher. It's about being wiser. So when someone cuts you off in traffic, when someone posts something online that gets under your skin, when the world feels like it's losing its grip, pause. Would I want someone assuming the worst about me? Would I want to be shamed publicly for one mistake? Would I want to be written off just because I think differently? If not, then maybe it's time to extend the very thing you wish you'd receive: patience, understanding, a little grace. Some people say kindness is weak, but I believe, and I think you do too, that it takes far more strength to forgive than to fight. It takes far more wisdom to walk away from an argument than to win it. And it takes far more heart to treat someone well even when they don't deserve it. That's not soft. That's strong. That's not old-fashioned. That's eternal. Because even as technology changes, even as politics shift, even as countries rise and fall, this truth stays the same. If you want to live in a better world, you have to be a better part of it. And you, more than anyone, know what that looks like. You've seen enough life to understand what matters and what doesn't. You've been wrong before and learned from it. You've been right before and stayed quiet. And now, in these years that so many call the golden ones, you still have something the world desperately needs: your example. Because kindness is not just a personal choice, it is a political act. It is a cultural resistance to everything that's breaking us apart. You may not lead a country, but you lead your household. You lead your street, your friends, your grandchildren. And that's enough. That's where real change always begins, with one person choosing to live differently. Let's keep walking through this together. You know, something beautiful happens when we begin living this way, when we stop thinking in terms of me versus them, and instead start thinking in terms of, what would I want if the roles were reversed? Life gets simpler. Not always easier, but certainly lighter. You feel less weighed down by the world's noise, because your values begin to guide your response. And that's something only time and experience can give you. You've lived through changing decades, changing norms, changing governments. But through all those changes, some truths never faded because they're written into our hearts, not headlines. Treat others how you wish to be treated. It's not weakness. It's not being naive. It's clarity. It's strength. You may not be able to fix the rising costs caused by global trade disputes. You may not be able to stop the arguments in the news or bring nations together with the stroke of a pen. But you can do something just as powerful. You can model peace. You can embody fairness. You can show the people around you, by the way you live and speak and move through this world, that compassion is still alive and still undefeated, because every time you choose to listen rather than assume, every time you help rather than judge, every time you extend a hand instead of a finger, you're saying, this is the kind of world I believe in. You know what happens when we live like that? Others begin to copy it, not right away, and not always perfectly. But kindness spreads, just like impatience spreads, just like fear spreads. But only one of those makes us better. Only one of those leads to healing. Maybe you felt overlooked lately. It happens to a lot of people as they get older. But let me say this clearly. Your presence still matters. Your voice still carries weight, and your example, especially now, is more powerful than ever. You've earned the right to lead without raising your voice. You've earned the authority to show us all what it means to live by timeless values in a fast, changing world. And that starts not with loud declarations, but with quiet conviction. When you treat others with respect, you remind people what being human looks like. When you treat others with care, you remind people that we are more alike than different. And when you live out this principle, what you do not want done to yourself, do not do to others. You teach by example, not with lectures, not with judgment, but with the soft power of integrity. So if you ever wonder whether it's still worth it to be kind, to be fair, to live thoughtfully, let me remind you, yes, it is. It's always worth it, because the world doesn't change all at once. It changes one home, one heart, one interaction at a time. And at this stage in life, you have the rare power to be that change, to live not from pride, not from fear, but from wisdom. Wisdom that says, even if the world around me forgets how to treat people right, I will remember. You've come a long way. You've earned your wisdom the hard way, through experience, through heart touch, through years of watching people come and go. But now is not the time to sit back. Now is the time to lean forward, to share what you know, to love like it matters, to live like your story is still unfolding, because it is. And there are people, young and old, watching how you carry this season of life. They're looking to you not for perfection, but for example. So give them one worth following. Hold the door. Call a friend. Give someone the benefit of the doubt. Speak with respect, even when you disagree. These things may not make the news, but they make the difference. So, here's what I hope you remember when this video ends. Your life still holds power. Your actions still carry weight. And you, just by choosing to live kindly, wisely, intentionally, you are shaping a better world than the one we woke up to this morning. And maybe, just maybe, that's the greatest gift we can leave behind. Not just memories, not just opinions, but the kind of daily example that reminds people, yes, the world is still worth believing in. Yes, goodness still matters. And yes, one life, lived with love and clarity, can still move mountains. So, here's to you, to your wisdom, to your heart, and to the quiet strength that reminds us all what it truly means to live well. If this message resonated with you, I hope you'll leave a comment below. Tell us how you're choosing to live out this principle. Like this video if it touched your heart. And if you haven't already, subscribe. Because here, we're building a community where wisdom has a voice, and age is not a limit, but a lighthouse. Here's to living your best life, with compassion, courage, and character, at any age. Thank you for watching.